Hi there, I'm Andy and welcome to my channel. In today's video I want to talk about a few common misconceptions about the way the money works, the bank work, and traditional financial system in general. And also I want to talk about how it all links to crypto, or how crypto may improve certain things. As always, if you like my videos, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to learn more about crypto, NFTs, Web3, please check out my course on my website, Crypto Like a Pro. One of the most common issues often quoted when crypto is being discussed is the fact that it's not really backed by anything. So let's say Bitcoin currently is worth 30K only because people agreed that it's worth this much. It's not really backed by anything. There's no other value in it other than the fact that people are willing to pay this much money for it at this point in time. And of course, it was much lower in the past. It was like 15 or 16K only a few months ago, but also a few months earlier, it was 60 or 70K. So it can move up and down in value massively. And essentially it's just people agreeing how much it's worth at any given point in time. But the thing is that this is not actually too dissimilar from traditional currencies. US dollar, pound sterling, Canadian dollar, euro, whatever other currency you want. Well, most currencies in the world. They only have value because we agreed that they have certain value. They're not backed by anything. They're not backed by gold anymore. And well, the only thing that really makes them a bit more stable is the fact that the government of the country that issued a particular currency promises that this currency has value. But even a country can go bankrupt, or at the very least, it can go into serious financial troubles. And people say that, oh, United States is too big to go bankrupt, or whatever other country is too big to fail. There's no such thing as too big to fail. Things are shifting in the world at the moment as well. I'm not saying that the US is about to collapse, but what I'm saying is that there's absolutely no guarantee that because things are a certain way at this point in time, they will stay this way forever, or even for the foreseeable future. Things can shift very, very rapidly. And well, in the last few years, we've seen how much things have changed around the world. Everything that happened because of COVID and then the war in Ukraine, I mean, that shifted the landscape quite a bit. The world is certainly not the same as it was prior to 2020 or 2019. So what I'm trying to say here is that there is very little backing traditional money. And the value of traditional money is very much still a thing we just agree between each other, just like crypto. And that's even before we get into inflation and to money supply and all of that. That's a completely separate thing. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about here is, first of all, what happens when you deposit your money in the bank, and also how money is actually created. So first of all, when you deposit your money in the bank, most people think that, well, the bank then basically uses this money to lend it out to other people. And here's the important part. Banks these days don't really need to keep much in reserves. As a matter of fact, a lot of banks, they don't need to keep anything in reserves. If you look at this article here on the website of Federal Reserve System, so the central bank of the United States, the Fed, basically about as good source of information as you can get. It says here clearly that it was announced on March 15, 2020, that the board reduced reserve requirements ratios to 0, effective as of March 26, 2020. This action eliminates reserve requirements for all depository institutions. Basically, banks don't have to hold anything in reserves, right? They don't need to hold any money at all. And if you then want to look at other countries in the world, okay, I'm using Wikipedia here, which you may argue that this is not exactly the best source of information, but well, as you can see here, it's referring to websites like the Fed, where, of course, this is about as legit as it can get. If you look at it here, there are a lot of countries which have 0 reserve requirement. That's including United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Sweden, Hong Kong, United States, as I mentioned a moment ago. And then if you look at other countries, very few of them actually require the banks to hold more than just a few percent. Brazil has 21%, Bulgaria has 10%, but a lot of them, as you can see, they are just single-digit percentages, right? And a lot of them are really low, 2%, 1%, 4%, and so on. So what I'm trying to show here is the fact that basically banks don't really have to hold any money or they can hold very little money in reserves, which means that then when people want to withdraw their deposits, it doesn't take much for the bank to run out of money because, well, if all the deposits are actually being loaned out or invested, and if they're invested, they are often invested in much more illiquid assets than the deposits that were made in the first place, right? So if you take, or even if we look at loans as an example, if you deposit money in the bank, usually you can withdraw that money pretty much at any time. You may lose some interest or whatever, but very rarely it happens that you don't have any access to that money at all. And even if that's the case, then that will be usually only maybe for a year or 2 years. You don't really lock your money in a deposit for a long period of time and have absolutely zero access to it, right? However, when the bank then loans out this money, or arguably also when it invests it, well, very often it will be over a much longer period of time, right? If you take out a loan, usually you agree to repay it over a period of few years. If it's a mortgage, then that will maybe 20 or 30 years. And of course, the bank cannot suddenly say, you need to repay your loan immediately because someone is asking for your money. So anyone who deposited money in the bank can ask to withdraw it pretty much immediately. But when the bank is loaning out this money, the bank cannot request it to come back immediately. So it's not that difficult for the bank to run out of money, right? So that's one potential issue. Second thing is how the money is actually created. So again, a lot of people think that when they go and borrow money from the bank is just giving them the money that someone else deposited. But this is not how it works at all. If you want to borrow any money from the bank, and it doesn't matter what's the amount, doesn't matter what's the period, you can take, I don't know, $500 on a credit card, which you don't actually need because you have this money in your bank account and you're going to repay it tomorrow, but basically you just want to get a few extra point, air miles, cashback, whatever. Or maybe you're taking, I don't know, $500,000 or $5 million loan because you want to buy a house, right? You're taking out a mortgage and you will be repaying this amount over a period of 20 or 30 years or whatever. Doesn't matter. The principle is exactly the same. The bank is not giving you the money someone else deposited in the bank, or at least they don't have to do it this way. What they do is basically they just create this money out of nothing the moment you request it. So let's say that you just spent $500 on your credit card. What actually happened is that the bank just created $500. It just added a line to the spreadsheet or a database or whatever you want to call it, saying that you now owe $500. This money was created out of thin air simply by you spending money on a credit card. Exactly the same way, if you are given a mortgage or any other loan, the money is being created for the purpose of that loan. And of course, if it's a mortgage or a car loan or something like that, well, then there is an asset backing it, right? That's usually why you can take much larger amount of money out of the bank or create much more money because there is an asset backing it. Although we've seen in 2008, 2009 that, well, a lot of people were getting money for homes, all types of real estate, but reality was that there was no guarantee that this real estate will retain its value, right? So when the market collapsed, well, actually the banks couldn't really get their money back, and the assets they were getting in return, right, because people were no longer able to pay their mortgages, were not really worth as much as the banks created in money. But that's, again, a whole separate story. What I'm trying to say here is that if it's a smaller amount of money, then that money is created out of thin air and there's nothing backing it. If you just spend $5,000 on your credit card because, I don't know, you just booked some plane tickets or going on a holiday or something like that, well, the bank cannot really get anything in return, right? They cannot get any asset as a security. You spend this money on holiday, so the money is effectively gone or it was moved somewhere else. So the only thing backing this new money that was just created by the fact that you spend the money you didn't have is your promise that you will pay it back. And this, in short, is how the whole financial system works at the moment. As crazy as it may seem, if if you're not familiar with this, it may sound a bit insane, but this is the reality. This is exactly how the financial system works. Basically, it's a lot of IOUs, a lot of promises that people or organizations will pay the money. And the crazy part here is that if you owe money, then, well, for you, it's a liability, right? You have to repay that money. But for a bank, that's an asset. So when the bank is creating, let's say, that $500 in new money, well, that has to be backed by something. But the thing backing it is nothing else than your promise that you will pay it back, which of course is fine as long as people are paying back that's their own. And that's why, in general, it's thought that mortgages are really, really secure because, well, no one wants to lose their house. So people generally tend to pay their mortgages. But this is also what led to the market collapse in 2008, 2009, because a lot of the mortgages that were given to the people who were not able to pay them back. The property values skyrocketed beyond what they were actually worth, kind of like what's happening at the moment, not maybe with the way the money is being loaned, but with the value of properties. They're going up like crazy, or they were going up like crazy over the last couple of years. And then it gets to the point that, well, people cannot pay it back. Banks can take over the properties, but then the bank has, well, they cannot really use the hundreds or thousands of homes they repossessed, so they have to sell them. So they put them on the market, but then that suddenly tanks the value of those properties, right? Because if there is a lot more supply on the real estate market, then, well, the prices will come down. And then suddenly more and more people are having problems with repaying their mortgages because suddenly their properties are not worth as much as they thought they would. So they may not be able to get as attractive interest rates as they had before, and so on. And we are in a similar-ish situation now, where we are living in a world where inflation was going up like crazy. Interest rates in most countries went up massively, while it was perfectly normal to pay, I don't know, between 1.5% and 3% for your mortgage a few years back. Right now, you'll be lucky if you get anything lower than 5 or 6%, or 7 or 8 even in some countries or some banks. So a lot of people suddenly have to pay much, much more for their mortgage, for their house, and not everyone may be able to afford it. Not everyone is in a position now to buy a property because essentially the cost of doing so is too high. The cost of interest is too high, which then is likely to lead to property prices going down, which basically will be this spiral similar to what we've seen in 2008, although of course not at the same scale because the core issue here is slightly different, but the principle remains the same. So that's something really important to understand, how money is actually being created, how debt works. And basically, it's not all that much different from crypto if you think about it, because there is very often nothing really backing all this new money created. And if you want to know what percentage of money is created this way, well, if you look at this article here, and we scroll down to money supply, and that's another good thing you can look at, money supply and how different components of money supply works, M1, M2, and so on. What you see on those charts here is that's US dollar and that's euro. What percentage is in various types of money, right? So the green bar here on this chart, make that bigger, that's cash, that's actual currency, right? And everything else is essentially debt. It's the money that doesn't exist, especially the gray stuff here. So if you look at it, that's in billions of dollars and that's in percentages of total. So only about 10% of money, and that was back in 2005 or 2006, only about 10% was in actual currency. Everything else was this virtual non-existing money. Very similar in the Eurozone. And if anything, things are even worse now. From what I remember, it's around 2% of the money worldwide that's actually in the form of currency, and everything else is just debt. So the point I'm trying to make here is not necessarily that crypto is better or that crypto solves all those issues, but rather that probably you shouldn't put too much faith in the traditional financial system because it's not really that secure at all, and there is really not that much backing it. It's all actually quite similar if you look at all the details. So that's why I think, or that's one of the reasons why I think that crypto, especially relatively strong cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum, are really good hedge against traditional finance. In case something was to collapse again, we are certainly getting gradually towards the position where cryptocurrencies are becoming more and more widely accepted. Of course, there still remain a high risk asset. So if there is a market crash, that may also upset cryptocurrencies quite a bit. But if you think about it, recently we had quite a few shakeups in the traditional financial system, and crypto often remained pretty much unaffected. I think it slowly shows that the situation is changing slightly, or the perception of crypto and the way it's used is changing, especially again, Bitcoin or Ethereum. Of course, with smaller cryptocurrencies, that's a completely separate story. We'll be talking about that in separate videos. But those big ones, they're becoming more and more of an alternative for traditional finance. And I'll finish this video with a couple of examples of how traditional finance doesn't work particularly well and where is the potential for crypto to be utilized and improve things massively. So recently I had to make two relatively large withdrawals from my bank. I say relatively large because it was more money than I would usually withdraw, but at the same time, we're not talking here about crazy amounts. It was transfer of $7,000 and then withdrawal in cash of $5,000. So larger amounts than what most people would do on a daily basis or what I would do on a daily basis. But we're not talking here about tens of thousands or millions or anything like that. And bear in mind, I have an account in one of the major banks. I live in the middle of a big city, so I should have pretty good access to all the financial services. So I wanted to transfer $7,000 and I couldn't do it online. I had to actually call my bank or go to my bank and ask for a permission for my limit to be raised for 1 day to transfer that money. And of course, I had to explain myself why I want to transfer this money. And this is just batshit crazy because I'm not asking here for a loan. I'm not asking for anything I don't have. This is literally my own money sitting in my own account and I want to transfer it. Why do I have to ask for any permissions or explain anything? Again, we're not talking here about huge amounts, right? It's my own money, right? Why do I have to do any of that? And then withdrawal of $5,000, it was a very similar scenario. I went to the bank and I was actually told that because it's one of the smaller branches of the bank, but still in a city center, in a big city, they only hold $2,500 per client per day. So basically no one can withdraw more than $2,500 without arranging it earlier, or you have to go to the main branch of the bank. So you'd think that, well, you have your money in the bank and you can access it in whatever way you want, whenever you want. But actually, it's not that simple, right? The moment you have to start asking for permissions or you have to start doing some weird things to get access to your money, well, that doesn't really sit right with me. So in this case, because I needed $5,000 in cash, I actually had to go to one branch, withdraw $2,500, and then go to another branch and withdraw $2,500 there. And of course, in one of those branches, I also had to explain myself, what do I need the money for? Again, it's my own money sitting in my own bank account. Why do I need to explain it to anyone what I want to do with it? I mean, as far as the bank is concerned, I may just want to take it and set it on fire. It's my own money. I'm allowed to do this, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that traditional financial system works well until it doesn't. It's all fine until you're trying to do something that's slightly, even very, very slightly outside of the usual daily practice. And also, well, it's quite clear that it's not really that secure if you consider all the potential risks and issues, or how the money is created, and well, what's backing it all, or what's actually not backing all of it. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I'm so bullish on crypto overall. And if we go back to the two examples when I needed to withdraw money from the bank and it wasn't actually that simple. Well, if you think about it, if let's say Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency was widely accepted, I could have done it just by literally scanning a QR code of the recipient's address and sending that money from my phone or my laptop or any other device. It could be done in seconds or minutes, maybe half an hour with something like Bitcoin. The cost would be minimal. Okay, there would be cost, but there are more and more solutions being put in place, layer 2 and so on, which reduce the cost of transactions on the blockchain. And that would be the end of it, right? I don't have to explain anything to anyone. At the end of the day, these are my own funds. I shouldn't have to explain anything. I can send that money anywhere in the world, regardless if it's weekday, weekend, whether it's during bank's opening hours, whether it's in the middle of the night. I can just send it, takes seconds or minutes, and it's all done. So yeah, I think that there is a lot that crypto can actually improve here. And I think there are a lot of reasons why crypto is a very viable alternative to traditional banking system. So I hope this all makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It's slightly different topic than usual, but I think it's really, really important. I think it's really important to understand how traditional financial system works, to appreciate what crypto may bring to the table and how it can change things. So if you found this video helpful, please, as always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and please put the comments in the comment section. If you think that this is the kind of content that would be helpful, if you would like to see more of this content, let me know, and I will try to put more content of this type out. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.